I'm Ryan Erickson, hosting our the entry into the Betaverse today. As I will now reveal the co-voice here, the infinitely talented Niels Flagging, and I'm going to make sure that I am not maximized and that we are equitably placed here in the field.
Yes.
So
And on eye level.
yes, we're now staring into this camera right here. Welcome, everyone, to the Betaverse BetaCodex Live Friday edition with me, Ryan Erickson, and Niels Flagging, for the topic of complexity theories: the good, the bad, and the
Partially true.
partially true. Yes. Why are we talking about this? Why does this matter? Complexity is a big deal. I've been talking about it in the agile space and all over the world, as it is a complex place. Why should people care about complexity?
Yes. Why should they? Why should they care, right? I have my answer, and I do not say it's the truth, but I have my stance on this. I think it's the most important distinction to make in work and organizations. And if we are not capable of doing that, if we do not grasp the essence of complexity, then there's little hope that we can do meaningful things with regard to organizational development, organizational design, decision making, leadership. Nothing will make sense if we don't figure out the difference between the complex and the complicated. It's so essential, I think.
And you put two words in there. We were talking about complexity theory, and of course the word complicated comes in.
Yes.
And that implies that there are some theories
Yes.
about what is the distinction between complicated and complex.
Yes.
And if you might draw a bit on the whiteboard and kind of say a bit about that.
And you just give me a good. I mean, I think we would talk about two circles, two colors today, right? The complicated blue and the complex red. But first of all, I think I should tell a little story. Something that happened to me this week, at the beginning of this week. I was on LinkedIn. Somebody got in touch with me, very reasonable guy associated to Agile, and he said, "I'm currently developing my own complexity model." And I was like, but I asked him about it, and he showed me what he's doing, and he came up with his own complexity theory. I mean, the title of our session here is Complexity Theories, but here's the thing: there shouldn't be several. We shouldn't have complexity theories, I think. I'm not sure why we have several. There should be one. It's like in physics, right? If you have several, one is dumb. Several theories about certain things. One should go on the garbage heap of history and stay there forever. Should be forgotten.
What's true and what's false, or what is what is truth, and how do you know?
Yes. And is there supposed to be truth, or as some probably would react like, okay, if there are two theories, maybe it's like black and white, and the middle ground would be correct, but it's not like that in complexity theory. Of course, we will not try to convince anybody. We can only advocate a stance and some rigorous scientific concepts here. That's the only thing that we can do, and this for me is the only complexity that we need. Yeah, I would argue, just to stir up the debate a little bit, here for our audience and for ourselves. I would argue that any complexity theory that goes beyond this distinction of complicated, complex, blue and red, as we will call them during this session as well, anything that goes beyond that is utter bogus nonsense quackery. Yeah, shouldn't be legitimate. Shouldn't be considered legitimate theory. It's flawed. Yeah. So why do we want to get into why complicated and complex first?
I would again, before we started talking, before I learned about the red and the blue and started to use that language for the folks that I talk with, that there were distinctions between what's clear, what's simple, what's complicated, and why is that quackery?
Yes. Because there's so many models. We all know that there are some models that claim that there is the complicated and the complex, and then there is the simple and the chaotic. Ralph Stacey brought up this idea in one article, foolish article of his. He placed a graph distinguishing between, I think it looked more or less like this, spheres, simple, complicated, complex, chaotic, something like that. Yeah. So that he left the genie out of the bottle. I think Ralph Stacey is to blame for everything. He's not, of course. I think he fairly quickly he recognized that this was not a good idea, because it suggests, this kind of graph suggests that complicated is more than simple, complex is more than complicated, and chaotic is more than complex, and that's just utter bogus. Here's the counter. Of course, I do not expect anybody to believe, and this is supposed to be a discussion, because again, I believe that this distinction is the most important distinction in the realm of work and organization. There's nothing more important to know than this distinction. Highly important. How to deal with complex problems, how to deal with complicated problems, how to deal with complex systems, how to deal with complicated systems. It's very important.
So what is the distinction? How would you define that for someone who has no idea? They just think everything is it's all complicated or it's all complex, and they have no distinction between them.
Yes.
How do you make this distinction?
So let's start from ground zero, right? Ryan, by the way, have you ever told your wife, honey, you are so complicated?
I probably have, yes.
I probably have as well. And of course, that's scientifically nonsense. Honey, our loved ones at home, in general, people are not, as long as they are alive, of course, they are not complicated, because complicated is dead. So we shall only say, honey, you are so complicated if she is in the fridge, the freezer. But then we wouldn't say that at all, right? Then we would say, no, you are simple. Honey, you are so simple. Because simple, oh my God, this is the strangest way of explaining this distinction, but it's scientifically accurate. Something dead is complicated. Computer, watch, plane, car, machine, dead, complicated. Yes?
Why is that? Why is dead complicated? Why is that?
Yeah. Russell Eckhoff, by the way, he was the best, of course, to explain this difference. He didn't use this color language. That's the only slight deviation that I think we should allow ourselves. But fundamentally, Russell Eckhoff would have explained it this way. Both kinds of systems can have many parts, like honey, who is complex. Honey, loved ones, children, family, and so on, living things. They have many parts, and complicated systems like my watch here, or a computer, or a plane have many parts. But here in the realm of the complicated, the relationship between the parts does not change. Otherwise, the thing is kaputt. Right? That's one of the few German names that everybody knows. Kindergarten, Zeitgeist, and kaputt. I think that everybody understands that, right? Broken system. But a complicated thing, if it works, the interactions, these complicated systems are exact, reliable, precise, like a watch, right? A computer, a software. All these things are complicated. No complex software in the world exists. Not in the real world, only in the realm of sci-fi do complex machines exist. We might get to that in a minute, yes? So this is really, is this a complexity model? I do not even know. It's just what we know. This is what we know about complexity and complicatedness. They are fundamentally different, yes? Because in the realm of the complicated, we have repetition, we have exactness, is that a word? Exactness?
Precision.
Size, yes. Linear, cause and effect relationships. We can switch things off that are complicated often, yes. We can control, they have switches. Different than honey. Honey, there's no switch. And our children, right? No switches. And sometimes we say, damn, that makes it also complicated. But yes, that's what we say, but it's not scientifically accurate. Honey and the loved ones are complex systems, living systems, right? Complex systems are living, not necessarily, or alive, not necessarily in the biological sense, like societies, markets, companies, organizations, teams. They are not biologically of a climate They are not biologically alive, but as systems, they are living systems. Yeah? And complicated systems are controllable from the outside, complex systems not so much, right? So complicated systems can be controlled from the outside. They have stuff like, they can be programmed, or they have programs, they can be steered from the outside, so to speak, like a car or a plane, yes, different with honey and our loved ones. So these can be steered, they can be controlled from the outside. What else? Rules can help us solve complicated problems, and processes are very helpful. Yeah, so when we have a production process in a factory, it's complicated. The process is complicated. We can automatize it eventually, maybe even automatize it. We can standardize it. We can automatize these things. Yeah, so standards, very important in the realm of the complicated. Standards, rules, process, control, all that is possible in the realm of the blue.
Well, and this to me also, one thing that I'm noticing, that all of those things in the blue, there's no concern for agency, decision making. There's that a complicated, well, by its nature, because it's dead, it doesn't have agency. It cannot make decisions for itself. It does not have soul.
You don't need decisions. What do you need?
Rules.
In the realm of the complicated, there is right and wrong. You can err, because you might lack something that's fundamental to solve complicated problems. What do you need to solve a complicated problem?
You need a set of rules. You need definitions. You
yes.
And
so to have rules, definitions, standards, processes, how is that called? To have it, it's called knowledge. In the realm of the complicated, knowledge helps you solve problems. You have knowledge about the process, knowledge about you buy a piece of furniture from IKEA that needs to be assembled, and there's a description, a recipe, and you follow it, and it works. If you deviate, not so much. Yeah? You need knowledge and respect it. Yeah? So in the realm of the complicated, problems can be solved with knowledge. And here's a very important thing which dequalifies all these quackery, bogus complexity models that claim that simple is a separate thing. No, simple is not a separate domain or thing. Simple is when you possess knowledge of the complicated, then things turn simple. Or as we say in science, they turn trivial. Trivial. So there's no domain of the simple. Simplicity is in the eye of the beholder who knows things. People with knowledge find the complicated simple. How do you make a cake? How do you cook a certain dish? How do you assemble that IKEA thing, kitchen furniture? It's very simple, says the knowledgeable person. Why, for the beginner, it's without knowledge, it's complicated. But not complex, that's still different, right? Because complex stuff can do crazy shit. Do we get to that, or any questions?
Well, I think with that, so I feel that the idea of complicatedness,
yes,
that's rule based, that the relationship between parts don't change. You can define relationships, you can document them, and scale process related to those relationships. And so you bake a cake, but when you bake that cake, the complicated that goes away, and the complex says, as soon as you eat that cake, what's it taste like? Does that taste good to you?
Yes.
I don't agree. That to me is that's the natural place to go from the distinction between the complicated and the complex.
And baking cake is an excellent example, of course, as well, for an excellent example to illustrate what we face at work. Because, of course, there is a recipe for every cake, yes, that exists. And so it's basically complicated. But there's some complexity. For example, when you make a cake, sometimes you need egg and milk, and it's not the same if you use that kind of milk or egg or that kind of, or that kind of water, or how cold has the water to be. And only the person with profound knowledge really knows that it's simple. And there might even be a complex part, improvisation, where improvisation is required. Okay? Like in jazz, there's a complicated part, and then when you improvise, that's complexity, right? You pay from the sheet, that's complicated. When you improvise, it gets complex. Yes, of course. I think that's pretty clear, right?
Oh, okay. Now I think you're baiting me with that particularly because
We both think
the
highly of
background.
jazz and improvisation in music. Yes.
Well, yeah. Well, the notes, the song sheet, the lead sheet, you can write that down. You can put it on paper. You can do all that stuff,
Yes.
and then as soon as it gets in the hands of those the carbon units, those random carbon things that are complex, then the
Like us.
change and the magic, then the multivariate
Yes.
stuff happens.
Yes. Which is why in a jazz band or an orchestra, the work usually has complicated components and complex. The complicated in an orchestra or a jazz ensemble is the sheet music, but then there is interpretation and style. And Miles Davis will tell you right at the start of the song that no, today we do this and that, and it deviates totally. So there is complexity in work. Usually, in every work problem that you face, it's not just complicated or just complex. There are bits and pieces that are complicated and complex. For example, if you want to develop software, that's predominantly
Complicated, of course.
the coding. Part of the coding is certainly complicated, and that's why ChatGPT or today can do so much coding. Machines can do some coding, the complicated bits, but the architecture, will you let that be done by ChatGPT or an AI software, which is an AI really? AI, by the way, like Skynet in the Terminator. Do you know that, Skynet?
Yeah, oh yeah.
That's the machine that becomes alive in the sky and then decides to build the Terminator and kill humanity, right?
Yes.
That's sci-fi. It doesn't exist because machines do not have a will, they do not have cognition, they do not have ideas. And ideas, and in complexity, you need ideas to solve problems, by the way. Machines do not have ideas. Machines are complicated, they do not have ideas, they follow code, right? So a machine cannot have ideas. Even the best AI specialists in the world have no idea how cognition would work in a machine. No idea, zero, zip. I've seen all the documentaries and read all the books. Yeah, they have no idea. So machines are complicated. Yeah, so you can let a machine do machine things like write simple software code, but to design certain, to develop and architect a system, there you need people, right? People with ideas. That's why you might use a Scrum team and so on. Yeah. So it's very important to understand that complexity means solving new problems, or to solve complex problems means you need people with ideas. To solve complicated problems, you need knowledge and machines. Yes? But usually in the realm of work, the blue and the red shake hands. This is essential, and this is why basically all complexity theories that are out there are utter crap. Pile of dung, dead parrots, yes? Because they assume that those are different domains. They are not. In the realm of work, you always face a combination between blue and almost always face a combination between blue problems and red problems in a project, in innovation, for example. Something might be dominant, the blue or the red, but usually in work, you need intelligent duality. This is very essential to organizational design and structure and power and decision making. How to make decisions, you don't need decisions in the realm of the blue, you need decisions and come up with ideas even. That's why we need conflict. Conflict as part of communication. Communication, by the way, real communication between humans is red, it's complex. So when we have a complex problem, usually we need communication, not just knowledge, not just rules. We need communication. Terrible red stuff. Yes. And we do not need process in the complex. We usually need a project too if we need several people. We need a project, we need communication, we need ideas to solve them. So much we know about complexity. This is assured. And any concept, feeble, haphazard, stupid little concept that claims that there is a realm of the complex where you can do this and this and this and that, and where you can ignore, and then you have another thing where all that is bogus. Because again, in reality of work, the blue and the red shake hands. So we need to switch from dealing with red problem mode to dealing with blue problem mode and back.
Okay, so this again, This is me bringing music back into it. I'm thinking in
Yes.
terms of an orchestra performance. Right. So the purely complicated part of that is the score that you can view, you can read, you can conceptualize, and those are rules set on paper.
Yes.
And that score, you inject humanity into it. When you do the performance, then you are that to me is the shaking hands. This is me trying to make sense of it.
Yes.
That the performance of a score is in the execution or the usage of a piece of software. How do we use this? What problems are we seeking to solve with this piece of complicated code and rules? And we're seeking to solve problems between human beings to varying levels of effectiveness. Okay,
By the way,
I,
what you just said reminds me of. Do you know the founding story of Blue Note Records?
I don't.
These two.
I'm embarrassed that I don't.
Okay, there's a great documentary about this. At least one of them was German, right? Alfred Lion. At least he was German. I'm not sure if the other Francis Wolff was also German. And this Alfred Lion, his English was not so perfect, not so stellar. And he, in the session with the great jazz musicians when they started Blue Note and in the first decades of Blue Note, he always said this kind of thing: it must swing. It must swing. Yeah, it must swing, he said, which is the German word to swing.
Swing.
It must swing, and it must swing is definitely a complex thing. Swing is, it must have
it don't
emotion,
mean a thing if it ain't got that swing.
Human touch. A machine, of course, we can imitate swing with machines as well by now, but the slightly off. For example, you're wearing the Synchronicity T-shirt, and I think Stuart Copeland is the best example of a drummer who definitely had swing, right? He could have played with Blue Note.
Oh, that
slightly off. Andy Summers playing guitar, lots of complexity in that, right? Nothing is accurate. Yeah, it's all a little bit brilliantly off. And also Sting, of course, is bass lines and so on.
It's the unpredictability, the mess.
Yes, that's it. Unpredictability, uncertainty. Of course, improvisation is red, and also bring in the human factor, and also to in the realm of the red, the interactions between the parts change, which is why complex systems produce surprise. So a good concert, I think we would say, there must be surprise. It cannot just be, that's why probably none of us would go to a concert by Kate, what's her name? Kate from California.
What, Katy Perry?
Katy Perry. I love her records, but I've noticed in her concerts, it's also perfect. She's like a machine.
Taylor Swift, same way.
Concerts are like machine-like, right? It's pretty boring if you look at it. Only the dress changes are very interesting, right? So we want improvisation. We want defect. We want humanity.
Well, that's how much humanity do you want? Do you want to witness the humanity happening on stage, or do you want to experience the humanity of the people around you who, oh yeah, I love this tune, or I'm singing to it, that you're experiencing that it's in the audience, but it's not on stage. It's watching a recording, right? Yes. It's watching a recording, and that there's a sense of it, but in the performance, in the creation, in the work, doing the work is the dance between the complicated and the complex.
And of course there are organizational systems that tend to suppress complexity and idea generation and creativity, and they are under complex by design, which are that they suppress complexity, so you get a machine-like organization. That's what Taylorism fundamentally did to organizations over time, right? The organizational design that became the standard model of organizing is based on the assumption that it's enough to be perfect in the realm of the complicated, to optimize a little, and that's it. And not so many ideas, and not so much thinking. Now, if you want to have an organization that is strong on thinking and creation and liberty, you need high levels of self-organization.
Well, and that
is why this distinction matters. One of the reasons why this distinction matters.
Well, because in that time, in the early 20th century in the Western world, the need to mass produce, right? There's a need, and in order to effectively mass produce
Yes.
and this I think is the bathtub that you're talking about.
Yes.
That's kind of code word for those who are in the betaverse.
Yes.
But the idea of, well, the world wasn't quite moving as fast and things were changing, but there was a consistency of demand. The communication wasn't that fast as it is now. So
Yes.
yes, so you can
Competition
make,
wasn't as fierce. Markets were maybe globalized, but not saturated and globalized at the same time. So
right.
a lot of things happened, right?
Yeah. So,
And
I guess this is what I'm saying. So Henry Ford, Taylor, I mean, that solution for that time
yes,
created this boom in society. Again, the
yes.
ethics of that being aside, but
So it's
that was the solution
exactly
of that time. But our time is different, and again, obviously, we need to
yes.
deal with the
So
harms and traumas of that past. But
yes,
as you were
management is
saying,
social technology, or Taylorism, as one might say, or command and control management. The pyramid model of organizing is optimized for a world where value creation is predominantly blue and there's little red
hmm,
because of the market, because of industrial, dull, slow-moving, vast, spacious, oligopolistic mass markets. That you can create systems that catered predominantly to the blue parts of value creation, and you could drive out the red, the surprise part by standardization, control, forcing and bribing people to obey. Behaviorism was very important, even for the first behavioral scientist in management like Elton Mayo. It was all about conditioning people into certain behavior, repetitive behaviors. Now, with highly complex, globalized markets today, highly competitive globalized markets today, the red became more important in the 70s, 1970s, and 1980s, starting with the oil price shock at the start of the 1970s. So much of the blue, the repetitive stuff, the complicated stuff in work, it was trivialized so far that we have automatized. Of course, the automatization goes on and on and on into software and now AI, as we call it. Yeah. So we automatized a lot of the blue repetitive stuff, work. It went away out of the realm of human work. And the red parts became more important. Stuff like customer satisfaction, customization, mass customization is something that Toyota figured out how to do in the 1950s and 60s, when it wasn't even relevant and became relevant in the 1970s and 80s. So the red, customer centricity, as some people call it, innovation, capability of innovation, all these are red qualities that have become dominant. It's not the only thing in work. We also have encounter blue complicated problems, but red has become dominant in value creation, right? At least in the 1970s or 80s. The world changed, red became dominant. Much of the blue was automatized away, processized and automatized. So today, the Tayloristic model of organizing looks awkwardly out of time, out of kilter with today's higher levels of complexity in markets and value creation. So we need a different model. We really need a complexity robust model of organizing where all the actors, not just the top of the pyramid, thinks, but where every unit in the organization, in the periphery and in the center, thinks and acts. Does that make sense?
well, it makes sense to me.
So to
The
be in denial about complexity and this difference between the blue and the red is just ignorant. Yeah? It's a tough thing. Otherwise, you remain a Taylorist, but Taylorism went to the garbage heap of history a long time ago, 40, 50 years ago. Yeah? Hopelessly out of kilter with today's time.
the other thing that when this word comes up, the word complexity comes up, I often see it with the verb coming in front of it, manage, to manage complexity.
Yes.
It would seem to me that complexity is that. What do you manage in complexity? How is that even possible? What do you say to someone who's saying, "I'm doing my best to manage complexity"? Well, what
I
is
would say
that?
learn your language. Managing complexity, sorry, but because of course, and this is a tough thing to say, maybe, acquire better words. Because management, of course, it's profoundly associated with this model of organizing. I'm not saying that the only framing of management is command and control, but management is awkwardly close to steering, control, command and control, right? So at least I recommend to call this model management. So complexity certainly cannot be managed. In the realm of the red, you cannot steer, you cannot fully control, you cannot turn off, and like with honey, yes, or with clients, you cannot control them. No management possible. Impossible to manage. So we need better words in the realm of the complex. Yeah, deal with complex problems. Decisions. I think decisions are. It's not even the best word here. We should not call decisions. We should call them agreements, maybe. And we have to come up with appropriate language for the realm of the complex. We must distinguish the things. By the way, this is one of the fallacies of, I think, the total quality movement, then the lean movement, then the agile movement has been to stick with command and control language, trying to express that new world of thinking and working. And once you talk of lean management, agile leaders, which again sounds an awful lot like command and control to me, at least, agile leaders, what is that supposed to be? Agile leaders, here it's all team, right? It's all togetherness. It's working with each other for each other. That's totally different than leaders.
Yeah.
And I think to develop this distinct language, that's the work that we still have to do. We don't need other bullshit complexity theories. We need appropriate language for the world of the complex, how to deal with that. And that's very subtle.
So then what makes good, bad, partially true? A good complexity theory would allow an articulate or an accurate articulation of that situation, right? Complexity is a situation, right? So that's a state, I guess.
It's yes.
I'm struggling with the language myself to translate. Is it possible to understand complexity? What can be understood in the domain of the red?
Well, a lot can be understood because, of course, many people confuse complexity with other things, like laissez-faire or total lack of patterns or chaos. It's not chaos. The chaotic is a specific type of complexity. Yes. My preferred example is, imagine a cup of coffee or a glass of coffee. Yes, you have coffee here, and then you put milk in it. The way that the milk and the coffee will interact and mix, that is a chaotic process. It cannot be repeated. It follows no script and no rule. Yeah, it is chaotic in the sense that you can not describe how the two will mix, but you know that in the end you will have milk coffees mixed, and it will both be in the cup it will both be in the vessel. Yeah?
You can't take the milk out of coffee once you put milk into it.
Yes, you cannot make it. You cannot return it. Put it back. Take it out.
Yeah,
it's
impossible. I want less milk in this. Yeah, so no, just put
that's
coffee
hard.
in.
Yeah, exactly. That's hard. Yes. So you cannot go back, and you cannot control. And if you would repeat the same thing, it wouldn't be the same. Yes. So because the way the two liquids mix will be different every time. Now, and this is even in the physical realm of the physical, that is true. It will, on the micro level, it will be different every time. So chaotic, in the realm of the chaotic, you can only predict the end state. Like in Jurassic Park, which is a novel about complexity, chaos theory, that the complexity theorist in the first movie and in the last movie, actually, played by Jeff Goldblum, another jazz musician, he predicts that the dinosaurs will escape, most certainly, and that they will even multiply and so on. But a complexity theorist or a chaos theorist doesn't know how that will unfold. You only know the end state. That's chaotic. Right? So the chaotic is it's like a speciality or a special thing in complexity. It's not a separate domain. And this is very important. Every complexity model that claims that there is a domain of the chaotic is a bullshitter and a quack. Why? Because organizations and work do not know chaos. There's no chaos no relevant chaotic bits and pieces or domains in the realm of work. In the realm of work, we encounter complexity, but not chaos.
Again, that's going to be that's contrary to popular belief, right?
Yes, the popular belief. Yes,
why
the popular belief was produced by propaganda.
Well, right, and the rampant misunderstanding of the terminology.
Yeah.
So how do we define that? And we have some comments here. One that Christopher Vestal put in here, that complexity is a disposition. That in terms of maybe that's the same. This is trying to find the right language for that. So if chaos is here, how do you define it? And then you're saying you're defining it by, we can only say the end state. But
that's true. That's a fact. Those are scientific facts. There is no realm of the chaotic, because chaos is a type of complexity, a specific pattern type, so to speak, a specific expression of complexity. No more, no less than that, which is neither good nor bad. I'm not saying that complexity is not good or bad, complicated is not good or bad. They are just distinct, difference. Like talking in the vocabulary of Gregory Bateson or Mr. Václavic, this is a difference that makes a difference. The other differences do not make a good difference. I mean, it's important to understand that the simple is when you know the complicated, then it's simple or trivial. That's important to understand as well. So there's the really important distinctions are the important distinction between knowledge and ideas, for example, or in the realm of the complicated, you need rules. In the realm of the complex, you need principles. Those are the important things that the so-called complexity theories out there do not explain shit about this. Yes, sadly. Or the linkage between, okay, how do we deal with process? How do we couple process and project work or standards and idealization or creativity, let's put it like this, right? How do we couple that in our organizations? Those are the interesting questions. Or in production. In a production process, we have no complexity. In a pharmaceutical company, a production process is utterly complicated. Yeah? Or at Toyota, to build the car, it's complicated. But a team at Toyota must master the process and set their own standards, and then they must do Kaizen, which is to improve, ideate, create, improve, invent better process, which is their realm as well, the Kaizen, the improvement, and to execute the work. And this is a great example to show that in work, we encounter the two, and they are intrinsically linked, sometimes with subtlety, and we have to ask ourselves, what can we do with our SAP system? And where do we have to put a person? That's why there are so many connections with work. This distinction, Toyota understanding it, resulted in the fact that Toyota is the car manufacturer with the lowest level of automation among all the car producers. And the worst factory that you can build is 100% automatized with no people. It will be obsolete, such a factory, a complicated factory, without human beings doing anything. Yes? It will be dead. It will be obsolete already in the moment because the world is complex, right? So
it's stillborn. It's dead. Totally, it's dead once it's born.
Yeah, the wet dream of so many top managers, the totally automatized factory, no people there. It will be obsolete before you even open it, before it starts operating. Yes, and it will never improve because machines cannot improve a thing. People with ideas can. So understanding this difference, it's the foundation of all intelligent work, to understand the difference. What can you do in the realm of the... You should never have, no company should have a marketing manual or an innovation budget or steering committees. Steering committees are, because here you need mastery. You should, in every project, you should have people with mastery, of course, right? People with ideas, capable of solving new problems. In the realm of the blue, you can ask, how is this done? And there will be an answer, there will be knowledge. In the realm of the red, you must ask, who can solve this unknown problem. It's a totally different question, totally different way to solve problems. And of course, if you have lots of red problems, you should create highest levels of self-organization. You should have a beta organization. Otherwise, you stifle creativity. It's the worst.
So this is kind of bringing it home. You talked about what a beta organization is. That a beta organization, it has been organized for complexity, right? You wrote a book about that, I think.
Yes.
Maybe.
Organized for humans and organized for complexity, both, right? Yes.
And so what makes this conversation, how might a person, what's so beta about this? Why is this important to BetaCodex, to working the system, to the body of knowledge that we're endeavoring to create with the BetaCodex network?
Yes, and I think we see every day on LinkedIn. I spent some time doing stuff on LinkedIn, for example. We see all the time how people confuse complexity and complicatedness. They try to solve complex problems with complicated means. Most of the tools that are discussed today and glorified, they are under complex and overly complicated. Many tools and processes, and they try to address red problems, but the means are blue. One of the, of course, most simplest examples of this is planning, organizational planning and budgeting, which is something that have been working on or against for 20 years, right? Yeah. And planning, of course, is a blue way of dealing with the future. Now, the future is a red problem. Arguably, there's surprise and there's complexity. Right? I think everybody agrees. Even the worst complexity theorist probably agrees that the future is a complex thing. Yes, not chaotic. There are patterns that we can describe how things will unfold and so on. So the future is a red problem, and we do organizational planning and budgeting and resource allocation and target setting. And performance appraisal, by the way, idealizes people as cogs in the machine that we can evaluate and punish. Yeah, which we shouldn't, because performance unfolds in teams. Maybe that's a topic for the next session. Right?
Yes, I was going to suggest that individual performance is myth. That's what individual performance is.
That's part of the complex reality of organizations, is that performance actually unfolds in the space between people and it's not done. Performance doesn't come like in a jazz band or an ensemble or an orchestra. Performance is not individual in an organization. It unfolds in the space between people, so to speak. Yes. So this is really key, to understand the difference between process and project, between rules and principles, to understand how rigor works in the realm of the red, which cannot be by stealth, command and control, or fear, because then you kill the creative spirit of people and the space in which creativity might unfold between people.
That's why you need to open more space.
Yes, that's why open space, by the way, is one of the greatest, is the greatest. I think it's unlikely that we will ever figure out a greater method for large group interaction and communication, because it has a minimum of rules, none really. It has principles, yes, yeah. And it's anybody who has ever participated in a real open space knows that it's a hard thing to feel that you are thrown back to your own individuality, your own complexity, and you become enslaved to your own emotions, and so it's crazy.
In open space, you are responsible for what you care about most, for speaking.
Yeah, and nobody controls you. It's a ridiculous thing. It's better than marriage.
This is actually going to be recorded and put out. Okay.
Oh my God! Now when Silke sees that, there will be stress at home. No, this was of course a joke, but it's you have no boss, and this is really true for beta organizations as well. The market becomes the boss, the client becomes the boss. For the center, the periphery becomes the boss. It's not. In the realm of the blue, centralized steering makes total sense. In Taylorism, 100 years ago, I admire Frederick Taylor's work. It was brilliant at the time. It was inhumane, slightly inhumane. It wasn't perfect, And of course, Mary Parker Follett had a much better idea at the time about how organizations would work. But what really Frederick Taylor told us and taught us is how to how to deal with complicated complicated bits of value creation, how to standardize, how to make work exact and scientific. Yeah? So that was great at the time, great advancement at the time. Now we have to deal with a more complex reality, and we have to build organizations so that external market complexity can be countered by value creation complexity, balanced. In a way, a beta organization uses complexity, absorbs it, and can dominate markets even. Like that's what Toyota and Handelsbanken and Gore and so on and others have done, innovating better, serving, being more adaptive and leaner, of course, less wasteful. Tayloristic organizations have become highly wasteful, and driving out waste, driving out steering, it's one of the essences of building complexity robust organizations today. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for this journey into the world of complexity and the complexity theories. Really only one. If you
we don't need more.
The differences that make a difference, the distinctions that matter.
Yes.
For those of you out there who may be watching, we're going to put a link in the chat. I've done so on YouTube. I'll put it out there again on LinkedIn. Niels and I will hang around for a few minutes if you choose to join us.
Yes, we would be happy to, right?
Yes, on again, if this is May 19th, 2023, 1:46 p.m. on the East Coast, you could do that. But again, if you're watching this after the fact, not. So, Niels, thank you very much for joining us. Us being the world at large. Do you have any words to share before we end the stream and go private?
Oh yeah, one thing. Frameworks are evil. Let's fight all frameworks. Don't teach frameworks. Frameworks are complicated bullshit, and in the realm of the complex, don't use framework. They are devils, like agile scaling and so on. All terrible. All of them. So don't preach frameworks. Don't preach complexity theories that go beyond this, because it's treacherous. We make the world a worse place, and we shouldn't do that. We should enlighten people with this. I hope everybody seeing this was able to grasp how intuitive this is ultimately, how interesting complexity is as a phenomena of work, and this distinction is everybody can understand it. My 13-year-old son understood it a while back, 10 years back. So anybody can understand this. Everybody should use this. Complexity is you have to hear a person from Wales, ranting on for 2 hours. It's not necessary. This distinction makes complexity highly usable as a concept and very intuitive. And I recommend, of course, listen to Russell Eckhoff. Yes. And then complexity we should be able to harvest complexity to make organizations more successful, more agile, more beautiful.
And whatever agile means, at that point, we
might
talk
get
about that. This is about what does complexity mean? Having good language or understandable language so that we can communicate, because that's what's needed in order to work on ideas together with each other, for each other in a big organization. Excellent. Well, we're going to end the stream now. Next week, performance management. Individual performance doesn't exist, maybe something like that.
Why it doesn't exist, why it never existed in organizations, and what we should change to, right? Maybe.
I like it. May 26th, 2023, sometime in the afternoon. We shall see exactly what time it is based on our availability, but will be published on LinkedIn, Twitter, and various and sundry other social media networks. Thank you, everyone. Be more beta.
Let's beta.
Let's beta.